Welcome everyone to the Mineral Answers presentation of the PBLA. I'd like to start off by thanking Tip Kirway for the opportunity to present to this organization. I definitely see a lot of ways that we could help the PBLA and that this organization can also help our mineral owner community at Mineral Answers. So I appreciate that, Tip. Let's get into a little bit of a background on me. I started off in more a technical role. So I started off in the industry as a geotech, really enjoyed the science behind this industry and ended up getting a master's degree while working in geology. And so, Chesapeake gave me the opportunity to work with a lot of data and see how data is shared between organizations and just, how we look at kind of asset management and development. And so it was a really good experience. After Chesapeake, I had the opportunity to join a startup. The startup was called Transform, and it was a geological and geophysical interpretation tool. But we really kind of found our niche with the shale revolution, bringing in engineering data and production data, and then kind of doing G&E modeling. And so kind of trying to figure out what variables drove production and other attributes. So really the analytical aspect of things, made us successful. And we were acquired by Drilling Info, also now known as Enverus, in 2013. And then I had a lot of great opportunity with Enverus. Was able to lead consulting teams across many different disciplines, also technical sales teams and product development. And so in 2019, somebody I'd known for a while, Jeff Chambers, had just started Mineral Answers and had the opportunity to join Jeff mid-2019. And so I've been with Mineral Answers since then, and we'll get into a little bit about Mineral Answers here shortly, but that's a little bit of my background. So one thing kind of to note as we get started, feel free to email us at support@mineralanswers.com with the promo code PBLA. And what we'll do is we'll set you all up for a free 6-month account with some of our more advanced tools and data sets. And it might be a good idea before you watch certain sections of this presentation, it could allow you to follow along and might be a little more helpful to just kind of see how I engage with the platform and then follow along if you want. So agenda-wise, we'll talk about what we are at Mineral Answers, how an owner engages with the Mineral Answers platform, and I think that will help give you the setting of how a landman and this association can help and benefit from the platform as well. And then using some of our more advanced tools that I spoke about, we'll take a deeper look at the Permian. And then, I love to share industry news and resources. And so, I love to receive that and share it. And so I'll give you some of the things that, I'm seeing and some resources that I like in the industry as well. So what is MineralAnswers.com? We're the easiest to use oil and gas SaaS tool in the market. So, thinking about this from the perspective of mineral owners, and we want them to really gain insights, and even industry participants. Can we make something that's really easy and simple to use and, at the high level gives good intuitive information, and then people can kind of dive in deeper as they need to. But, we really just want to educate this segment of the population, make them a little more sophisticated. And I think in doing so, we just help out the energy ecosystem as a whole. So prior to my oil and gas experience, this is what I thought of when I heard Spud McKinsey. All this to say, with the website, when we're dealing with mineral owners that maybe just inherited something or they don't know the industry like we do, we try to translate, simplify words, and think about ways to communicate that they're going to understand. I remember when I started at Chesapeake, I was handed this glossary, and it was like a translation guide with a lot of different acronyms like BOE, EUR, and you name it. It was a pretty large booklet, and at that time I realized that this industry almost has its own language, and that can be really confusing for owners And kind of for our community sites, we try to do our best to simplify it. I'm still guilty, like a lot of us at times, as far as maybe using terminology that wouldn't be understood by a mineral owner, but it's something we aim to do to just help the educational process. So we're going to pause here for a little bit. The next section is going to dive into a mineral owner, and once a mineral owner signs up with our community, how do they engage? And so that'll be the next section. Thank you. Now we're going to review how a typical mineral owner engages with the website. And this, could be just somebody who inherited minerals, somebody that's owned minerals for a while. It could be an industry professional who also owns minerals, or maybe manages minerals for someone, or it's just somebody who's helping somebody else with managing their minerals, a family member. But whenever they sign up, what we do is help guide them on identifying their property. And so this screen is the first thing that we try to take them to, this simple property onboarding. And think of it almost like a TurboTax approach, where we start off with some basic questions, and then depending on those answers, we'll ask a different set of questions. I'm going to give it a property name. In this case, I'm just going to say Test Reeves Noble, who's the operator. They can select surface acres, mineral acreage, or royalties, and whatever they would select would then kind of guide us on what to ask next. But in this case, I'm going to say they're mineral rights that are leased and are paying a royalty. And so with those boxes selected, we'll ask for the state. Again, we've aggregated all the public data from most of the major states that produce in the U.S. And then Reeves County, it's all type ahead. Again, we use verbiage such as planned wells instead of permits, just anything to simplify things for the owner. And I do want to track planned wells near the property. Super important to stay on top of anything planned. And obviously this is a situation that often leads to numerous offers to buy their mineral rights and those types of things. So it's just one of those things that can drastically increase the value of a property whenever those permits or planned wells are filed. So we're going to check that box. This is Noble Energy. Again, things that you would typically find on the check stub. The operator, normally a check stub's not going to have like an API number, but should have the operator name and then the individual well names. And again, we provide some guidance. In this case, if you start typing the wells, since Noble has quite a few wells in Reeves County, if I just start typing in the start to Jalapeno, these are the two wells I'm looking for, actually, the Jalapeno State Unit B wells. So once I select these wells and add them, now they're here in a property view. And so this is really nice. I never have to find these wells again. At any point, I can click into this property view and the map will zoom into the wells, to the surface locations. And in this case, I'm going to zoom out a little bit and turn on nearby wells, which will also turn on the sticks, wellbore paths. And you can kind of see where those wells are relative to some other wells. So this is definitely an active area with a lot of horizontal wells. And at any time, I'm going to select this well and open it in a new tab so that I keep this tab open. And what this does is allows you to see any kind of details of these wells. So there's a lot of navigation over here as far as a map of the well, some basic stats, related documents, if it has well logs, production details, and we'll review. Most of the owners aren't going to look too deep into some of this. But again, we highlight the abstracts in this case that the wellbore crosses. Well activity stats will give some basic information as far as like cumulative production and producing formation. If I were to move down to production details, this is good to kind of let me see month to month, how's this wellbore producing. And, we can see this well has snapped back a little bit as far as, it was declining kind of the COVID summer months. And then, recently it's maybe been turned back on a little more as prices have kind of recovered. And so that's good to see if you own an interest in these wells for sure. So going back to the dashboard, again, this is a good way to track properties. Another thing that a lot of owners like is just this production report. And anytime there's new production reported from the state, we'll notify them of new production. And what this is going to do, it's going to group all the wells in the property together. So think of it, a lot of times you might have a check stub that has 10 wells on it. So you can consolidate all those wells to a check stub, or from a check stub into one property, and then here we can kind of see the month-to-month change by property. So this is nice, and again you kind of see the bounce back even on a property level with both wells. And the other good thing is just, hey, how did it change month to month? We see a drastic increase in November versus October of 48% for oil and about 45% for natural gas. And so it's obviously really good to see, and it's a good way to know kind of what to expect with future revenue and just how the wells are doing in general. Another way that an owner might engage is maybe they are just a mineral owner, or they know more the section township range or something like that instead of like the actual operator and well names. And we have a kind of a map-based search, very easy to use. I encourage anyone to come in here and try it out because at the base level it's really good to use your mouse to scroll in and out and just really see what's going on. We have a nice heat map layer. As you zoom out, what it'll do is turn into more of a wells layer at a certain zoom level, and as you zoom in farther and farther, more granular land grid items will pop up, such in this case as abstracts or wellbore paths. And as you zoom in, you can see more. Now, if you don't like these acreage tiers, we've gone through and actually graded the acreage, kind of using our opinions of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and fringe. And there's a lot that goes into that as far as production, geology, other attributes. But that's something we've done. So I'm going to turn them back on. And again, that's an example of kind of Karnes County in the Eagle Ford, more of a kind of abstract or meets and bounds type of land grid. If you had some minerals in Colorado, you'll see things a little differently. Zoom in here on some Weld County acreage. And you can see these wells show up, and some permits here, some wells here. Again, at any time you could select the wells from these maps, get some well header information, and then also open up the well for more and more information. So we'll do that. And as you can kind of see from this view, this is a situation where this well is not added to any list so far. We don't have it in a well list. You can see the kind of the estimated drill unit or the section that the wellbore crosses. And at any time I could add this to a new well list and save it. And so that's another good way that owners can just, if they just know a map view or some geographic reference point and they just want to view their properties that way and see what's going on, they can do that. So those are two of the typical ways for an owner to find their wells, to navigate, to just see what's going on around them. Maybe they're even a surface owner that just wants to see oil and gas activity nearby, something like that. So that's kind of how they do that. Now, we get a lot of questions, and there's a couple of ways that owners ask questions. One is just through a contact form. We're always here to help them and do our best to answer every question we can. And a lot of cases, we'll do some research to answer the question properly. Sometimes we'll, lean on other industry professionals and try to kind of guide them to the right person. And I think this is where, industry experts come into play. And we put that here on the community page because, we certainly can't answer every question, but we're building a really good network of people that can. And so if an owner just wants to ask a question, we can kind of structure a lot of the fields. They can put a title, the body of the question, and these tags are really nice. And this is where, we have kind of partners that tell us, hey, I can answer questions regarding leasing, transacting, audits, maybe some estate planning and transferring mineral rights. That's a big deal with this audience. Like, a lot of it is just educational. They don't want to sell. They want to manage minerals and just stay on top of what's going on, and we can help there. So we kind of break it down into whatever it is, category-wise. Sometimes they just have questions over payments. Maybe it's some aggregate pay laws that they don't understand or want to figure out how their interest percentage was calculated. Some of that kind of overlaps with auditing. But you can kind of see these categories, and this is where obviously we get a lot of land-related questions, and so this is where, letting us know this is where I'm an expert and in what areas as well. So you can kind of select a state. We'll structure it based on where the question is coming from a mineral rights perspective, such as the state and county. And if they have the information, the township range, which of course, if they select Texas, that changes to more survey block abstract. So that's how we structure getting the information to help answer questions, which hopefully that helps kind of clear up a lot of, what they're going to see and maybe how industry professionals can help. There's also, search by producer if they want to find operators, mineral buyers, or even landmen. That's a way that they can try to find experts themselves if they want to. And so those are the main ways that an owner, once they join the site, connects. Just to recap, there's a simple onboarding process to do our best to help them self-identify wells. There's also a map search if they know more geographically what they own and where. We provide that. There's also a community aspect where we want to make sure we can answer questions in the best way possible, and that's another way. And that will conclude the mineral owners section. Thank you. Okay, we've reviewed how mineral owners engage with the platform, and now we want to review how landmen or other industry professionals can engage. The world's certainly changing. I think we're all aware of that as far as the ability to get online and look at businesses and get reviews. We see it in a lot of other industries. It hasn't quite made its way yet to oil and gas, but it certainly will. I just got back from a soccer tournament in Cyprus with the family, and the first thing we do, and this is just second nature, when we get to the hotel, we're trying to figure out, where do we go eat? Look at Yelp, look at the, most highly rated restaurants nearby. There's always sponsored content. That looks pretty tasty right here. It almost had me, but I'm going to look down here a little bit more at some of these other ratings and reviews. And look, I'm not necessarily not going to go eat at a 4.5 star. In fact, sometimes if it's a 4.5 star with a lot of reviews, I'll go there and look at it more versus a 5 star with, say, 5 reviews. Not necessarily with restaurants, but with hotels especially. Sometimes if there are a few negative reviews, I'll look at those and just see how they handled them. What was the nature of the negativity in the review? Was it just the hotel wasn't clean enough, service, what was it? And then, what was the response? And sometimes how they respond is just as important, as the review. Those are just things now that I look at, that I know a lot of people are out there conditioned to look at. And you see it with every industry, banks, travel. Trustpilot's a website out there that does a lot of this. And again, we have best practices. We want to help. We want to help professionals claim a business page, have the ability to go get third-party reviews, embrace it, respond to any negativity and bad reviews, and just have that open dialogue. And knowing that nobody's perfect, there's going to be mistakes, and there's going to be sometimes you just can't make everybody happy either. But how do you respond, I think, is super important. And again, not everybody's going to embrace this part of the industry. This industry's always been non-transparent in a lot of different ways. Not only the information and knowledge arbitrage between owners and industry professionals, but just think of the industry. There's confidentiality in new wells. Companies lease under third-party companies, to kind of keep some secrecy, and I get it. And there's reasons for that are, economic, but at the same time, what about those companies that kind of embrace a different world and say, we want to get this lease because we actually drill the best wells, we can prove it. We have the best customer service, we can prove it. Our partners are happy, we can prove it. And so I do think that the industry is going to change in the next 5 to 10 years, and there's going to be a group of people that embrace it, that can be really successful. And there's still going to be a group that doesn't. But it's an opportunity out there. It's certainly an opportunity, in my opinion, for landman type of profession to prove themselves, to be fast, to be responsive, and get good reviews, and treat people the right way, and let them tell the world about it, about how good you do. And then we want to help those people. Those are the people we want to connect to our audience. Those are the people we want to be successful and do well in this industry, basically. And so we're here to help. We have a lot of thought and content around kind of building that reputation, not just through our website, but through your own, and those types of things. That's one piece. The other piece that we have is kind of more advanced search, more tools for the more sophisticated users. I'll give you an example of one thing. You might actually have a group of wells that you're looking up for somebody, and the API numbers, and you want to do a search. As long as they're common delimited, you could paste multiple APIs in at once. It doesn't matter if they have dashes or not. There's obviously a lot of other filters here that you can do. Operator or producer name, well name, state and county, recent production, those types of things. So in this case, I'm going to zoom into a group of wells, and you can see where they are on a map. It'll take us right in there. And then there's a list view that will pop up that we can save these all to a list if we want, an existing list or a new list. There's a polygon tool. Once you zoom into an area, you can just kind of create a polygon around these wells. And now it's just these 3 that we see in the list. I'm going to delete this polygon and reset the filter. And now we kind of see all the offsets in this area. And maybe I just want a new polygon now with all these. So there's a lot of ways here to, with more functionality, to grab kind of offsets, the wells you want. We do have some advanced tools that allow you to export out monthly production and the analytics, kind of grade data, well header, initial production rates, horizontal links, all this stuff that kind of might be related to a well. We have all that. The other thing that a lot of people use is our permit tracker, whether they're mineral buyers, mineral management companies, landmen, obviously owners even, but looking and seeing, okay, just, we bring in permits daily, but just whatever time frame you want to look at, what are those permits in the area? And you can kind of see how these line up to our tiered acreage as well that we put a lot of effort into. And, at any time I can select any of these permits and get more information, look at things like the plat and the actual filed permit, those types of things that we surface up. So those are the main things. Obviously, to recap, there's a community piece. We want you to be able to claim a business page. Let us know kind of what your expertise is and where. Where would you like to get tagged? One thing I'd recommend with our audience, for those that can do it, is a 15-minute consultation. And the reason I say that is a lot of times they might not own something that to them is even worth paying for, meaning like it could be fringy acreage. They're not quite sure what they own, but it's in an area that you kind of know, hey, you might have to pay this amount of money to do title research, but there's really not much going on out here. Is that an expense you really, maybe they do, but at least have that consultation to see if it's worth it. I think that's one thing. And the way that we've seen this with this audience is, sure, there's going to be some times where it doesn't lead anywhere and, you'd have spent 15 minutes and received no payment, but there's going to be, 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 5 that could really have a lot of work for whatever it is, and some really valuable assets behind it as well. And so I think that's kind of what you'll see here through time is there's some that really aren't going to pay out, and there's some that are. And I think if you do enough volume, you'll start to understand that. And really the ones, we've seen this a lot with our owners where they've told us stories that they spent $3,000 on an attorney, and maybe they had such a small fraction of a well. There's really no way it was going to pay out anytime soon, even close to that. And it was just probably the wrong way to approach getting an extra couple percentage of a royalty for $3,000 on that type of acreage. And those are just things that we've seen examples of it that, are just kind of sad in a way. But I guess where I'm trying to go with that is just, I would say 15-minute consultations can go a long way with our audience, and, just trying to do the right thing. And, with 5 at-bats, you're certainly going to hit a couple of singles and a home run every now and then. So that's I'm going to stop here, but this is kind of a way that I see industry professionals such as a landman engaging with our audience. Thanks. All right, in this section we're going to dive into more of the Permian using the platform, and just kind of showing you all how to use the platform to get more information just in specific regions. What I've done here is I've set this to some minimum dates, so just new wells since 2017, and then also just kind of set permits to post-COVID crisis, so mid-March, and then we can zoom in here and just see where those wells are. What I'm going to do for now is turn off the well spots, and we can just see permits. Pretty interesting to look at to, again, see where permits relate to acreage quality as far as our, opinion of good acreage and tiers 1, 2, 3 in fringe. You can see here there's a lot of what we call kind of more tier 1 acreage in the Delaware. It's a little less concentrated in the Delaware as it is, say, maybe in the Midland Basin. So, northern Midland, Martin County, a lot of that has, at least in our opinion, some really good acreage. And I think some of the permits that are filed since kind of the height of COVID help out with that story. You can even see some tier 1 pockets down here that have more permits around it. And so that's one thing to know in the platform. Central Basin platforms here as well. A little bit of a different profile. Some of these may be cheaper wells, shallower in some areas. So it's maybe not as fair in some cases to compare these to Midland and the Delaware, because there are some permitted pockets here that we see that could be really interesting. But that's just kind of a look at our acreage tiers, how it relates to permits. I could turn the permits off and then, dive into any of these wells that we see, turn these on. Looking at some of kind of the newer wells in Tier 1, diving in and just seeing how some of these wells perform. This is a diamondback well, a lot of information when I click on it. And from here I can kind of look and see some more information as far as, the overall stats of this well from a detail page. It's a Tier 1 well in our opinion. A lot of good production here with this well, definitely a high performer, and you can look at a lot of things, but it's kind of fallen off. The production profile here has fallen off a little bit. So those are things that we always look at on a per well basis, and so pretty interesting with the application. The other thing that I'd say could be good from kind of a Permian point of view and just looking at different acreages. This is an enterprise version that we have, so it's a more advanced tool. But what we've done is we've created an analytics grade data set with just derived set of variables that we take from production, and then we kind of put them all in the ability to be mapped, and especially with production, kind of to bubble size the production in the U.S. And I'll just show you an example. But before that, you can turn on and off a lot of these layers: heat maps, surface spots, terminals, pipelines. We've got a lot of good layers in here that can kind of be turned on and off. But in this example, let's just look at oil. So we're going to say IP 6-month oil. Keep in mind here we've got an energy equivalent BOE. We also have a economic BOE. We have a 20-to-1, but this is a little different. It's just looking at forward strip prices of oil and gas and creating kind of a dynamic economic variable based on future strip pricing. But like I said, in this case, let's look at oil, and let's look in the Delaware Basin, only horizontals, and let's set a date of 2014. So since January 1st, 2014, horizontal wells in the Delaware, we want to bubble size them by IP 6-month oil. So it zooms us right into the area, and you're going to see the bubbles. They're colored by operator, but it just lets you zoom into areas and start to see pockets of really good production, and where maybe production is not quite as good. So it's going to, like I said, bubble size it for you. If you wanted to turn on the wellbore paths at any time, and then you zoom in a little farther, they'll start to show up. I could also turn on the surface locations of every other well. So even though I'm only filtered to wells since 2014, this can give me a look at more of the historical wells in an area, which can be helpful sometimes. Something that's interesting to do. We'll turn this on and off, and let's look at wells that have produced at least 200,000 barrels in the first 6 months. And then we can kind of see where these wells are. And, a lot here in kind of this Texas, New Mexico border area, some really good acreage there, spans Wolfcamp and Bone Spring formations, a lot of good layer cake geology there. And then at any time you can zoom over some of these really good wells and you see these solid diamondback wells. These are the best of the best. At this point, even this smaller bubble size is 220,000 barrels, so still a really good well, and also tends to relate well to our Tier 1 acreage, which helps kind of provide, I think, some assurance there. I also, we allocate production in Texas, so I like to see how things cross the border and making sure that there's good trends there. So those are some of the things, and we could do the same thing here in the Midland Basin. So let's just switch over, keep the same parameters, and let's do this same thing in the Midland Basin. And again, these are the best of the best wells in the Midland Basin, and we can kind of see where those are. A lot of them in our Tier 1 acreage. And notice how it's IP 6-month oil there. If I were to switch this metric to the BOE economic and then research, I'm doing a 3-month here, BOE economic, but so let's change that back to 6 for more of an apples to apples comparison with the 220,000 barrels. And so yeah, there you go. So you see what I want to point out here is when I hover, that new production variable is at the bottom. So whatever you select is at the bottom. And I look at this as just a good way to kind of look at the acreage quality, kind of see where the core is just by doing, some kind of cutoff filters of production in certain areas is certainly one way. Now, there's other variables to consider with well performance, such as the profile, the decline, and those types of things. But again, it's a good quick look, and it's certainly interesting. So that's one way to look at the Permian. Again, we're seeing a lot of consolidation. You saw WPX and Devon, Conoco and Concho, and so there's certainly a lot of that going on, and we'll probably still see that start to happen and take place. But again, you kind of see some tools here that if you ever wanted to dive in at acreage quality of an area, you have that ability. And all of our land grids will be here. So, I would say this could be a really good, if I had to just say what are some really good areas, well, this is nice. Kind of some of these abstracts in this area, just some very, very big wells. So the propensity to really drill some good wells is here. So it's just something to look at. So that's it for the Permian section and kind of how to use our platform to dive in and get more information on wells in the Permian, and just kind of look at acreage quality, get our opinion on acreage tiering and, the quality that we think the acreage is. Just, if anything, for another opinion, it's built in here. And so we'll end that section on that note. Thanks. So this portion of the presentation, what I like to do is always just share knowledge, share resources, things that I like, that I think are valuable. I love it when people do the same with me as far as what are one or two of their go-to resources that they look at daily or weekly for information. One that I like is just going to the EIA. You can sign up for their updates, their email distributions of various things. As it relates more to kind of the lower 48, I'd recommend things like This Week in Petroleum is good. Also, like anything related to natural gas storage, you can see those here as well. And I'll give you a couple examples. This Week in Petroleum, you can see how we're starting to converge here as far as gasoline prices. You may have seen this like I have at the pump lately, where we were at this time last year versus where we are now, and then just kind of changes and what we're seeing there. Oil futures contract pricing, we're about where we were at this time last year. So that's pretty interesting to see, where we are versus this time last year. And so we're about there. And why? Because, this is the other variable to track. It's inventory levels, stocks of crude. And you can start to see this blue above the 5-year average in this midsummer area, kind of after travel had been shut down for a while, and you start to just see inventories build up. Prices are a lot lower at this point because of that inventory, but now it's starting to creep back into these 5-year averages, which is why we're starting to see some of the price recovery. One big reason. And so it's a good variable to track. It's just stock changes week to week. You're going to see prices fluctuate as these reports come out weekly. So it's a good thing to stay on top of. Same thing with natural gas, just looking at inventory levels by region, Some of the changes and some of how it relates to a 5-year average is interesting. And then always, having the graphical view of where we are now here in blue versus 5-year averages, and then max min of those 5 years, the range is really interesting to see. So, and then another website that I visit some is the Richardson Bar website. It's interesting. You get some headlines, but what I really like is just how are these publicly traded companies performing, and really just gives you an idea of the market sentiment. And even though we're back to kind of price levels pre-COVID, the market is still a little bit cautious of these companies as a whole. And that's why you see a lot of red year over year, a lot of 20 to 30% drops in stock prices. Now, what's interesting though is some of these natural gas companies, you can see that they've performed really well this year, and we saw that from some of these reports, looking at natural gas prices and stuff like that and changes. But again, it's good to kind of understand where we are now. The last 6 months, these companies have mostly recovered some, just not all the way. And so it just shows that even though we're kind of back to pre-COVID level prices, there's still a little bit of a reluctance, I think, in the industry as far as capital expenditures and investment pouring in. It just feels a little bit different still. So there's still some recovery left. So this is a good website. There's also things like commodity price changes for both NYMEX natural gas and crude oil. So that's another one. So again, I just wanted to share a couple of other resources beyond MineralAnswers.com. We do incorporate a lot of this data into our website as well, but it's always good to know sources. And anybody out there, if they have sources that they really like that helps them out on a day-to-day basis, I'd like to know that as well. Thank you. I just want to take time here at the end to thank you for following along. Also, Tip, thanks for giving us the opportunity to present to the PBLA. Make sure you sign up for the 6-month premium account. Our contact is support@mineralanswers.com. And along the way, as you use the product, I would love to get your feedback. So feel free to let us know as well. As you get feedback, you can just email us at the same email address. And I wish you all the best in 2021.